The door swings open, and time stops. Margaret's hand freezes on her coffee cup. Her eyes lock onto the young woman standing in her doorway, and something deep in her chest cracks open. Not recognition. Not yet. Just a pull. Like gravity. Like a memory her mind has buried but her body still carries. She doesn't know this girl. She doesn't know that in 4 weeks, this girl will be folding her laundry, cooking her meals, scrubbing her floors. She doesn't know that in 6 weeks, she will be sitting across from her at the dining table she has eaten at alone for 11 years, weeping. And she doesn't know, she cannot possibly know, that the daughter she lost in a fire 23 years ago is standing right in front of her, waiting to be hired as her maid. But we do. And that is exactly why you cannot stop watching. Margaret Osei did not become one of Accra's most powerful women by being soft. At 52, she owned the largest textile company in Ghana, wore her silver hair like a crown, and moved through the world with the kind of confidence that makes other people stand straighter just being in the same room. Her mansion was immaculate. 6 bedrooms. A garden no one ever sat in. And a silence so deep it hummed. She had drivers, assistants, housekeepers who lasted 3 months before her standards broke them. But lately, the house felt like it was swallowing her. She needed someone living. Someone permanent. She called the agency on a Tuesday. They sent 3 candidates on Thursday. She dismissed the first woman before she finished sitting down. She chewed the end of her pen like a schoolgirl. The second one couldn't look her in the eye. Margaret had no patience for people who couldn't hold their own gaze steady. Then the third one walked in. And Margaret, for the first time in years, paused. The girl was young. Early 20s. Slender, with quiet eyes and hands that were already calloused way beyond her age. She sat down without being told twice, kept her back straight, and looked at Margaret directly, not with arrogance, but with a kind of dignity that felt almost familiar. "Your name?" Margaret asked, not looking up from the file. "Abena," the girl said. "Abena Mensah." Margaret looked up then. Something in the voice, soft, but steady, like water moving beneath ice, made her pause. She shook it off. "Can you cook?" "Yes, ma'am." "Clean without being told twice?" "Yes, ma'am." "I don't like noise before 7 in the morning. I don't like questions I haven't invited. And I do not like things moved from where I've placed them." Abena held her gaze and said, simply, "Understood." Margaret hired her that afternoon. Now here is where the story changes. Because Abena Mensah did not walk into that agency by accident. She had a photograph. Old, faded, the edges soft from years of handling. A young woman, maybe 25, 26, holding a newborn baby wrapped in yellow cloth. And on the back, in handwriting that had started to bleed into the paper, 4 words. Margaret. Accra. 1999. Abena had found it in a locked wooden box. The box belonged to Auntie Dora, the stout, one woman who had raised her in the outskirts of Kumasi, who sold firewood and never once turned Abena away, even in the months when there was almost nothing to eat. Auntie Dora had died the year before. And on her deathbed, she had held Abena's hand and whispered, "Find your way, my love. You were always meant for more than this." She left Abena nothing but that box. When Abena opened it, she found the photograph. She found a hospital tag, too faded to read clearly. And she found a name. Margaret Osei. Accra. Abena told herself she wasn't looking for anything. She was just looking for work. But she had memorized that name long before she ever applied to the agency. And when the agency mentioned a client, a wealthy woman, alone, in a big house in Accra, Abena had felt something shift in her chest. She was not chasing a reunion. She was just getting close enough to look. What she did not know, what she could not have prepared herself for, was that Margaret had been looking for her too. For 23 years. In every face. In every city. In every little girl who would now be a woman. She had just stopped believing she would ever find her. If this story is already pulling at something in your chest, stay with me, because what happens next will completely break you. And if you've ever lost someone you love, this next part is for you. The first weeks passed like water, quietly, steadily, with no warning of what was building beneath. Abena learned the rhythms of the house fast. Black coffee at 6:30, no sugar, no conversation. Classical music every evening at 8, Margaret would sit in the study with a glass of wine and just stare at the garden. Not reading. Not walking. Just sitting with something Abena couldn't name. Abena didn't ask. She had learned young that some people carry grief the way others carry keys, always on them, never spoken about. She cooked. She cleaned. She moved through the house like she had always lived there. And Margaret watched her. Not deliberately. Not consciously. But she kept finding herself pausing, in doorways, at the edge of rooms, just watching this girl. The way Abena hummed while folding laundry. An old Ghanaian lullaby, low and soft, like something from a dream. That's the first time Margaret's hand trembles. She doesn't know why. She tells herself it's nothing. The way Abena tilted her head to the left when she was thinking. The way she never complained, even when Margaret was unreasonable, and Margaret was often unreasonable. One evening, Margaret comes downstairs late, after midnight. She hasn't been sleeping. She finds a cup of tea on her desk, still warm. No note. No explanation. She stands there holding it for a long time. "Why did you make this?" she asks the next morning. Abena looks up from the stove. "You were pacing again, Mom. You do it every night around midnight. I thought it might help." Margaret stares at her. "You were watching me." "I was listening," Abena says simply. The floorboards creak on the left side of the upstairs hall. A long silence. And then, for the first time in what feels like years, Margaret almost smiles. "But we need to go back. Because you need to understand what Margaret has been carrying." Margaret is 26 years old. She is not wealthy. She is not powerful. She is a young woman living in a single room in one of Accra's most overcrowded neighborhoods, with a newborn daughter, no family support, and a man who disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant. Her family had given her an ultimatum: give up the child, or be cut off entirely. She chose her daughter. She named her Amma. "You are the only good thing I have ever done," she used to whisper to her. Every night. Like a prayer. She worked 2 jobs. She paid rent 3 weeks late every month. She ate less so Amma could eat more. And she told herself, "This is temporary. This will change. I will build something better for both of us." Then came the night that changed everything. A kerosene lamp. Left burning in the room next door. The building was old, the walls were dry, and the fire did not give anyone time to think. Margaret ran. She had nothing, no shoes, no bag, just the clothes on her back and one desperate, screaming thought: where is Oma? Her neighbor had been watching Oma. The neighbor got out. But in the chaos of the street, the smoke, the screaming, the bodies pressing in every direction, no one could tell her where the baby was. People were running. People were falling. Someone had passed a baby to someone else, who had passed it to someone else, who had passed it into the dark. By the time the fire trucks arrived, Margaret was on her knees in the road, screaming a name into the smoke. No one answered. The authorities filed a report. Aid workers searched. Volunteers searched. Margaret searched every single day for 3 years, then every week for 2 more, then every month until the months became years and the years became a decade and the decade became a life she had built on top of a wound that never closed. Every little girl she passed on the street. Every child roughly the right age. Every face she studied a second too long before looking away. She never found Oma. What she found instead was work. Then ambition. Then money. Then power. And she poured everything she had into building something enormous, because if she ever stopped building, she would have to sit with what she had lost. And she could not do that. She could not survive that. So she built. And built. And built. Until her house had 6 bedrooms and a garden no one ever sat in. Until she ate alone at a long dining table every night. Until she hired a young woman from an agency on a Thursday afternoon and felt, for one strange, unexplainable moment, like gravity had shifted. She did not know why. She did not let herself ask. Don't go anywhere. What is about to happen in the next 60 seconds is the moment this entire story has been building toward. And I promise you, you will not see it coming. It is an ordinary Tuesday. Abena is at the kitchen sink, washing the breakfast dishes, when she reaches up to push her sleeve back. The fabric catches. Slips from her shoulder. Margaret is passing through the kitchen doorway. She stops. On the back of Abena's left shoulder, small, irregular, shaped faintly like a crescent moon, is a birthmark. Margaret's coffee cup falls from her hand. It hits the floor and shatters. Abena spins around, alarmed. Ma'am. Are you all right? Margaret cannot speak. She is gripping the counter with both hands. Her face has gone completely white. Her eyes are fixed on that small mark like it is the only thing in the room, like the entire world has narrowed down to that one spot on that one shoulder. Because she knows that mark. She has kissed it 1,000 times. In the dark. In the early mornings. In the desperate weeks before the fire when Oma was the only real thing in her world. She knows that mark the way she knows her own name. That mark, she finally whispers. On your shoulder. How long have you had it? Abena blinks. Confused. Searching Margaret's face for something, she doesn't know what. Since birth, she says slowly. Auntie Dora always said. She stops. What? Margaret's voice breaks open. What did she say? Abena goes very still. And then, slowly, with hands that are no longer steady, she reaches into the pocket of her apron. She places the photograph on the counter between them. Margaret looks down. Her own face stares back at her. 26 years old. Exhausted and radiant and terrified and full of love. Holding a newborn wrapped in yellow cloth. She turns it over. Her own handwriting. Bleeding into the paper. Margaret. Accra. 1999. The sound that comes out of Margaret is not a word. It is not a scream. It is not a sob. It is something older than all of that, a grief and a joy so completely tangled together they have become one single thing, one long note of anguish cracking open into something that might, with enough time, become relief. She covers her mouth with both hands. Her knees buckle. I looked for you, she whispers. I never stopped, I looked for you everywhere. Abena's eyes fill. Her chin trembles. I didn't know, she says. I swear to you, I didn't know it was you. I found the photograph, and I just wanted to see. Her voice breaks completely. I just wanted to see what you looked like. Margaret crosses the kitchen in 3 steps. She doesn't think. She doesn't speak. She pulls her daughter into her arms, and Abena goes, and they hold each other among the broken pieces of the coffee cup on the floor, both of them shaking, both of them crying without any shame at all. The wealthy woman and the maid. The mother and the daughter. Two people who have been living parallel lives in the same city for weeks, separated by nothing but a title and a uniform and the unbearable cruelty of not knowing. 23 years. 23 years of searching, of building, of surviving, of grief, collapsed into this one moment in a kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday. Outside, the Accra sun continues its indifferent arc across the sky. Inside, something that has been broken for 23 years quietly, finally, begins to mend. Margaret did not send Abena back to the agency. She did not keep her on as a maid either. What she did was sit across from her daughter at the long dining table she had eaten at alone for 11 years, and talk. It was not easy. Healing never is. There were hard conversations. About a fire. About chaos and strangers and a baby passed from arms to arms into the dark. About a woman named Dora who had loved with everything she had and asked for nothing in return. About 23 years of a wound that both of them had been carrying, in different cities, in different ways, with different names for the same grief. There were silences that were not empty but full. There were nights when Abena would start a sentence and not be able to finish it. Nights when Margaret would reach across the table and just hold her daughter's hand and say nothing at all, because sometimes nothing is the only thing that fits. Slowly. Painfully. Then, gradually, with something approaching ease. Abena moved into the room with the big window that faced the garden. And some mornings, if you passed by the kitchen early enough, you could hear two voices. One older, one younger. Humming the same lullaby. Slightly out of sync. Learning each other's rhythm. It was not a fairy tale. But it was, all things considered, a beginning. There is a kind of loss that doesn't make the news. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, in the searching that goes unanswered, in the doors that don't open, in the years that pass and the silence that fills the space where someone used to be. But sometimes, not always, not often, but sometimes, life folds back on itself. And the person you lost walks through your door. Not as a miracle. Just as someone looking for work. If this story moved you, if you have ever lost someone, or spent years wondering what became of them, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And tell me in the comments, do you think Margaret deserved her second chance? Or did she wait too long? Subscribe if you're new. I tell stories that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. I'll see you in the next one.